Oh, wait. I look like one of those, like... What are those Muppets that, like, the big mouths?
Oh, the Martians.
Yeah.
You do. Yop, 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 yop.
Test. Hello. Hello, can you see me? I am here. Is that better? Sorry. Feels weird moving you around like that. I hope that didn't screw anything up. Is that working now? Hello. Hello everyone. So this is obviously a bit of a different setup than I usually have. Usually it's just me recording on my phone because I am super professional. But anyways, today is Halloween. I am living in a new place and I realized that I can actually use professional equipment that I have and have had for 2 months, but I just haven't used. So anyways, happy Halloween. It's Halloween currently, which is, I love it. It's awesome. So yeah, anyways, basically, it is currently Halloween, and I am dressed up, I guess, as Gideon from Gideon the Ninth, which is my favorite character of all time. If you haven't read Gideon the Ninth, I highly suggest it. It is so good. So worth your time. Just read it. Just read it. Stop whatever you're doing and read it. Like, honestly. So I thought, while I am dressed up as the space lesbian of our dreams, I could make a video about Gideon the Ninth and why I love it so much, because wow, it is so good. Hello everyone, this is like the 4th time I've tried recording this because I've never used this camera before because it's my partner's camera and I've never used his setup before, so it's very interesting and we're gonna see how it goes. I don't know if that's working. Okay. I'm really hoping this is working a bit better. Hello. My name is Fenreeds. Welcome to my video. How are you today? Hello everyone. Look at this. A brand new location. Except it's not. Kind of is though. So, it's been a minute since I've made like an actual video. I think the last video I made was in September, and then the video that I'm gonna be posting tomorrow, which will be November 1st, which is basically just a vlog of me doing stuff in October. But today, I am dressed as the marvelous Gideon the Ninth, and I wanted to talk about Gideon with you guys, spread the word. I specifically wanted to talk about why I love it so much, because holy, it's just amazing. It owns my entire heart. As you can see, I have a tattoo of Gideon the Ninth on my arm, and yeah, like, these characters are honestly just better to me than any other characters. I don't know what it is. I think it's just because I relate to Gideon on a personal level. Like, I am rude and snarky and sarcastic 90% of the time, so I feel her. I get it. So what is it about Gideon the Ninth that makes me love it so much? Good question. Gideon. It's Gideon that makes me love it so much. It's just her. Gideon Nav is literally everything I could ever want in a character. She's snarky, she's sarcastic, she's a lesbian, she loves women, she's buff, and she has a goth girlfriend, and that's like, what else could you possibly want? Like, that's just everything in life. Like, she's got everything I could possibly need, and my personality, which feels like theft, but also I love it. Up until recently, Gideon the Ninth has been the only book that I have ever cried to while reading, and I cried hard when I read the ending of Gideon the Ninth, like sobbing in the back seat on my way home from the aquarium. Like it was rough. So obviously I have a lot of feelings about this book. It means a lot to me. There's hair everywhere now. And yeah, read it if you haven't. I'm forcing my partner to read it right now. They love it because it's amazing. Why wouldn't you love it? Go read it right now. So honestly, another reason why this book is so good to me and like why I'm so attached to it is the writing style that Tamsin uses, which is a very interesting writing style that I haven't seen before. It feels it's like old-fashioned, but almost more modern at the same time, and I find that really interesting. So it's written like a gothic horror, like a classic gothic horror, but it has the modern sci-fi elements to it and the very contemporary like humor, and just like it's funny, but it's also what is happening? And this castle, it's beautiful. You know, like the usual things you see in a gothic horror. I also love that it's described as a, like, I hear it described as a sci-fi novel a lot, which it definitely is, especially when we get into Harrow, where we see a lot more of the sci-fi elements come up. But in Gideon, we spend the majority of the book in a haunted space castle, which absolutely amazing. There is nothing more I could want in the world than two lesbians running around a haunted space castle. Like, every time I talk to someone about this book, I'm like, yeah, it's about lesbians in a haunted space castle, and they're sold. Like, and then I add in the necromancy part and they're even more sold because it's incredible. It is beautiful. I love it. I also never felt like the book was dumbing things down for me, and that's something that I've been really frustrated with both adult fantasy and YA lately, is I feel like they take concepts and then they melt them down to be more palatable, which I don't really like. I want to discover, I want to learn about this world without it being told to me like I would never understand it. Like I like figuring that stuff out myself. I like the confusion. Like when you if you were to walk into an alien world, you would have no clue what was going on. Like you would just walk in and everything would be confusing. All the customs, everything would be confusing and weird and wacky. And that's like what Gideon the Ninth is. It throws you into this world where nothing makes sense to you, and nothing is really explained to you through exposition dumps or anything. There's like a few maybe. It's been about a year since I've read it, so excuse me if I get my facts incorrect, but I like being treated like an intelligent reader, and I like being treated like I can figure something out on my own, which is another reason why I love the writing, because it gives us clues and indications on where everything is going and what is happening, but without kind of like telling us exactly what's happening. So I find it really cool. This cloak is so weird. But yeah, like I loved everything about Gideon the Ninth, and I'm gonna keep talking about it because no one else will listen to me. So let's talk about, firstly, the other characters in Gideon the Ninth and why I love what they bring to the story. So basically, when we're at the space castle, we have lots of other characters who are introduced who are part of this sort of challenge to become lictor, and each one of these characters has their own like personality and their own needs and their own families, and it's all very, very interesting. And I find the characters are defined well enough that you can be like, okay, they have a sort of trope to them, but they're implied in a situation where a trope like that isn't that common. Like having, I remember thinking about Fifth House with the mother and the father character who were very traditional and welcoming and calm. You don't get that often in sci-fi, maybe more in fantasy. When I was reading them, I felt like I was reading like a little cottage family from the woods. And I don't know, it's the last fantasy book I read. I've been reading nothing this year because I am tired. I am in university. I am allowed to be tired. But I digress. I really like the idea of introducing these characters into an element where they usually wouldn't be, and these tropes and these like I find these characters would belong in various different genres, except for this one. Other than Harrow. Harrow 100% belongs where she is. She is in her element the entire book, and she's perfect, and I love her. Whenever I read about Gideon and people's opinions on it, I hear a lot of this, like, I read a lot of the same things, which is the idea of modern language being mixed with traditional characters and traditional setting. Because it is set in a space castle, we are kind of thrown into something that looks like fantasy, but you have these characters who speak very modernly. Like, Gideon makes a Mean Girls reference. I'm not kidding, that happens. It is one of my favorite scenes. But those moments of like modernity and characters that are placed in the present, but also in the future maybe, but also in the past, makes this really interesting balance of characters that feel both relatable, but also far out of reach. And I really like that. I loved everything about the characters, to be honest. I thought they were perfect for the roles they played. Corona Beth was very funny to read about while the whole virus thing started. I was like, oh wow, there's a character named Corona in this. That's cool. But she was cool. She seemed like she would be in a horror movie as like the beautiful, confident blonde, rather than a gothic horror in a space castle. Her sister, Yante, I can't remember how it was spelled, she seemed like she would be in a gothic horror, which makes sense considering everything else, if you know what ends up happening. So yeah, like the characters are really, really interesting because some of them behave like they belong in this type of genre, and some of them behave like they belong in a totally different genre, in a modern setting, in a very old fantasy setting, in anything other than sci-fi, in anything other than gothic horror castle sci-fi. So it's just a really interesting mix of characters who all kind of built on each other. I think it was the 8th house, the very weird one. I can't remember their names, but they were the ones who were very, they reminded me of the 9th house, if the 9th house was a bit more violent. But those kinds of like horror characters that I felt like I would see them in a Stephen King novel. So when I was reading the stuff about that house, I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And then we had the 7th house, which had Dulcinea and her cavalier. I don't remember his name. So they were also very interesting, especially because that gave Gideon a friend, and that gave Gideon a reason to like keep going to visit her and put some tension between her and Harrow. And I think that was really smart. But also Dulcinea seems like she would be, again, in a classic fantasy book. She has that feel to her where her speech is very like eloquent and very nice, and then Gideon is just like, yeah bitch, that's cool, look at my sunglasses. Like, it's a very different dialogue between these two characters. They don't feel like they're from the same time, but somehow they are. So I thought that was really well done. I loved how different all the characters were and how they still fit into traditional tropes at the same time. but being thrown into a situation where they didn't belong. So also because of these really good characters, the relationships that are done throughout the book are very strong. And one thing that I look for when I'm reading a book is strength in relationships and strength in character. It is the most important thing to me when I'm reading. I don't care about much else. I am really attached to the idea of strength in characters and like strength in relationships and their friendships especially. So seeing how Gideon would get along with the fifth house and the children and the parents, and she would talk to them and get along with them, and she had kind of a father figure in the dad, if I remember correctly, and that bond that shouldn't have been there considering Gideon's blatantly bitchy behavior compared to his very open fatherly behavior. They didn't seem compatible, and yet through so many conversations and so many situations that they went through together, they were compatible. And I find that really, really hard to write, but also really impressive if you have written it. Another thing that's super cool and also really hard to explain is the magic system of this world, which relies mostly on necromancy and thanergy, which are defined more by the rules of this world than by what we consider necromancy. It makes really interesting like explanations for how different types of necromancers do different types of things. So for example, Harrow controls bones, she controls skeletons. That is her type of necromancy. She's able to like, kind of puppeteer them for however long her magic lasts. So I'm gonna go through like all the houses and their necromantic abilities. The first house is God. Yeah. The second house is very war orientated, has a lot of soldiers, and it specializes in absorption of life energy and like combat and law. Like they're lawful neutral if they were a D&D character basically, but they're magic kind of pulls life from people rather than reanimating the dead or doing something with the dead. It's pulling a life force from someone else. So I would refer to the third house as our bards of this world. They are very gossipy and they spread the news and they spread the fashion, they spread the trends for the time. They're very much bards, like traditionally. That's just what they remind me of. So the third house specializes in eating and consuming energy from dead corpses. So unlike a lot of other necromancers who can only pull energy from someone who's just died, the third house can pull energy from a corpse no matter how long it's been there. So they can just suck this energy right out of that and eat it. Which is cool, I guess. Do what you want, but corpse energy isn't really my thing. I think it's still a cool power though. So this is the fifth house. Fourth house. Fifth house is the next one. I don't remember these characters existing. Whoops. It's been a bit again. But yeah, apparently their necromantic specialty is turning corpses into bombs, which I think I vaguely remember that happening, but not like super well. Sounds like something that would happen in that book though. 100%. And I need to go back and reread it so I can see the corpse bombs. So the fifth house is one of my favorite houses other than the ninth, just for Gideon and Harrow existing. They control the history and like they're very sagely inscribing, and like they share history throughout the planets and the houses basically, which I find really interesting, that we have a set planet for history. I want to know what their libraries are like because I want to go. But for the most part, from what I could recognize, of Abigail and her husband, Magnus. I love him. Magnus and her husband, they were very peaceful people, which makes sense that their powers were speaking to the dead rather than stealing from them or pulling something out of them or taking life from a living person to fuel their own need. They would speak to them, which I think that's a really interesting characteristic, and I'm really glad that they went with that for those characters, because I couldn't see them being some of the brutal necromancers that we saw throughout the story. Now, the sixth house is similar to the fifth house because they also specialize in knowledge and history and how things sort of have worked since the beginning of this empire. So they also have gigantic libraries that I don't get to go to, and I think that is very rude. Their type of necromancy reminds me of how the Fade worked in Dragon Age, or at least in Dragon Age Inquisition, where you can read the history of something just from having an object in the Fade. And they can do something similar where they can look at an object and learn what it's been through and who it's been seen by and who it's been touched by. They can see the memories of that object, and I find that really, really interesting. That would probably be the power I'd want to have out of any of them, because that's super cool, and I feel like I could just like pick up lipstick and be like, who has used you? And understand. And I think that's really cool. And also, their planet apparently has a lot of libraries. In their orbital library, they have an orbital library. Let me go. I want to go to your planet, please. So, much like our Bard house from earlier, the seventh house specializes in beauty and trends, but they are specifically over things that are dying. So they see the beauty in the decay and the beauty in the loss of something, which makes a lot of sense considering the main lictor to be of that house, I forgot what they were called, is Dulcinea, and she is this very, very beautiful woman that Gideon is 100% in love with, but she's dying. She has a blood disease or something like that, and she is in the process of dying throughout the entire book. And so she really matches that description where it's something very beautiful, but it's haunted by death. And I think that is really, really cool and really, really striking imagery to put into the book. So I think for them, they can kind of keep the soul of the person from leaving for a while. Yeah, I'm looking at a website that kind of describes all the houses, but so they can preserve the soul within the body and they can preserve the body itself. They're like funeral directors. They make bodies look very pretty and they keep them there and you can visit them, but they use this very different means in the books. So be prepared. So I really like this house too. I find them really interesting, especially about finding beauty in death. I 100% agree. Obviously, most of my favorite books involve a lot of death, and most of the stories I'm writing myself involve a lot of death, so I'm particularly attached to the whole death thing. The eighth house belongs to two bastards that I didn't like. I was so annoyed with them throughout the book, just because I am not a fan of those. Like, again, they feel like the ninth house, they feel very culty, they feel very against everyone. I'm reading their description and it says weakness, a tendency to martyrdom. Or like, what? A tendency to martyrdom? Oh wait, did that happen in the book? That probably did happen and I just don't remember, because I didn't like these books. But their necromantic specialty is soul siphoning. They can wedge a soul into the breach between life and the afterlife and use it as a conduit for spirit magic. So that is really cool, and I would be so much more interested in that if the 8th house wasn't a bunch of assholes and was actually, if they had nice people, I would be interested. But from what I remember, every time Silas was on the page, my rage would slowly build because I hated him. And I don't even remember why I hated him, I just remember hating him. I hope it's valid. And finally, we have the home of our beautiful lesbian necromancers, the 9th house. The 9th house is a protector of the tomb. They are basically a nunnery, like, they're a religious congregation that protects the tomb, and they also are very secretive and very they're very weird. They're very, very weird. Their house color is black and only black. They don't do other colors. It's black and it's only black, which is like the face paint, the cloak, the clothing. Ignore the tights. I wanted to be comfy. But as said before about Harrow, their necromantic specialty is raising and crafting skeletons, and it's very interesting. I like that idea a lot. It's very traditional, but the way Harrow does it and the way it challenges her is made very interesting throughout the book. So it's not original, but it's brought into an original light, so it crosses itself. It cancels itself out. So it's all good in the end. So as I was doing some more reading on, like, I think this is Tor.com, which is the publisher that Gideon the Ninth went through, I found apparently Gideon resonated with a lot of people. I have never really connected to a character as much as I connected to Gideon, but people are saying it is because she is outwardly damaged and very, like, she's vulgar and she uses humor as a coping mechanism, and that's just something, that's just me as a human being. So having someone that I relate to that much carry the story the way she did, and then have the ending, like, of the book that she had, and like that whole arc throughout Gideon the Ninth, it was really heartwarming and great to see this character do something so powerful with her life while I related to her. Like, I felt like after reading Gideon the Ninth, I could go beat up a skeleton monster thing in a lab because its arms look like swords. And finally, one of the last things that did it for me, even though everything in this book did it for me, the sense of humor that Tamsin Muir puts into this book is exactly my sense of humor. It's very vulgar, it's very out of nowhere, and I'm just gonna give you some quotes that are personally a lot to me. So I'm pretty sure this is about the 8th house, and I don't remember what either of them looked like, but I just know from this description that this has to be about the 8th house. But for some reason, the image stayed with her. The mayonnaise magician and his thick-set nephew, older than him by far, staring out of empty eyes as teacher watched with the air of a man with front row seats to a back alley dental surgery. And there's so many descriptions like that come right after, like, beautiful gothic descriptions of, like, the structure, the castle, the way magic works. And then Gideon will be like, look at that mayonnaise guy, Mr. Mayonnaise Uncle, you see him? And it is exactly the balance I need between wow and yes. Another very relatable moment. But Gideon is experiencing one of the most powerful emotions. Being sick of everyone's shit. Again, between all of the gothic descriptions, we get beautiful lines like these, and they are perfection. One instance of Harrow being funny in Gideon the Ninth, there's like a few moments where she like makes a tiny joke, but this one's my favorite, which is she had left Harrow Hark a note under her vastly underused pillow. What's with the skulls? And only received a terse, ambiance. It's very Harrow Hark. Like, Gideon leaves a note under her pillow and she's like, why skulls? Why are there skulls in her bedroom? And so my phone camera died. My phone died. So we're finishing the video like this. Basically, I love Gideon the Ninth for so many reasons, and I needed to scream about it while in makeup. So I hope you somehow enjoyed this video, and if you did, let me know what your favorite book is, because I think we should all talk about our favorite books like this. Like, we should all just scream about how amazing our favorite books are to the heavens. It is a very wonderful thing. So I hope you all have a great Halloween and a safe Halloween, and have a wonderful week. My upload for my October vlog will be out soon. I don't know when. This will probably come out first. But yeah. And then I'll be starting my November vlog, because every month from now I'll be doing kind of a school related blog and just what I'm doing, because my life is very weird now. I also actually want to start doing videos about my writing process, because I have started writing a book and I am very proud of the progress I am making, so I would like to share that with people. So I hope you liked this video. Here is a mic. It is not mine. I'm not used to these. So I hope you liked this video. It was very chaotic. I don't care. Have a lovely day, have a lovely night. Goodbye.